As we come up on the first anniversary of the Sacred Circle Temple, I wanted to give everybody a really good overview of the chart that we saw with the temple creation last year, and just kind of let everybody know just how interesting and special this chart was and why it was such a big deal when we put it up on our website and sort of talked about it during the dedication ritual. And I would like to kind of give you a peek into my process. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to take these coordinates that were on our website, and we're going to plug them into WinStar Express. You can see when I click New, we already have these coordinates installed in the WinStar Express. We have our date set for April 1st, 2007, our time set for 4:30 p.m., which was actually the time that we started the dedication ritual for the temple. We have our latitude and longitude in Mountain Daylight Time. Clicking OK brings up this chart that you saw. One of the things that I really like to do when I'm first looking at a chart is I like to get a sense of the big picture of what's happening in a chart. So one of the first things that I typically do is I flip the chart from this standard wheel, which has all the lines coming in and it has all the houses and everything very neatly arrayed in the houses. But I tend to find that it gets in the way a little bit when I'm looking at a chart and I want to see the big picture of what's going on. So the first thing that I typically do when I'm looking for the big picture is I flip over to an Aries wheel. Now you can see in an Aries wheel that there's two things that have changed. First, all of these house sections have gone away, and we're left with a very wide open empty space out here, which you can really see the interactions between the planets. The other thing that happens is that it flips because Aries becomes the horizon. I'm very much a student of pattern astrology or planetary patterns or aspect patterns. And so this is one of the things I really like to do to get a look at a chart and see what's going on. So when I first looked at this chart last year, I could see that there was a couple of really interesting features that were going on that I really wanted to get a closer look at. And so one of the things that I first did was I went and I said, there's kind of this square structure going on here. And I can see that the square is coming off the Sun and Saturn and the Moon and Neptune right here. So these red lines are kind of going, green line here, here's a trine, here's a square. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to my options. I'm going to look at my chart one planet, and I'm going to start turning off planets that I'm not interested in looking at. And this is one of the things you can do in WinStar Express. You can just select which ones you want to look at. So I know that I don't want to look at Mercury, I don't want to look at Mars, I want to look at Jupiter and Saturn, I don't want to look at Uranus, and I don't want to look at Pluto or the node of the Moon. And when I click OK, I have my 5 planets that are sitting here and they're isolated. And you can see that, we have this really interesting structure going on. Now, one of the things that's really, really fascinating about this chart to me was the fact that this points on this chart is the Moon. The Moon is the fastest moving planetary bodies besides Mercury and Venus. And it really changes very, very, very quickly the things that can happen in a chart. So being curious, I came over here and I went, I want to look at the same chart, but maybe I want to look at it about 2 hours after we've kind of finished the circle and we're done with the dedication ritual. And isn't that interesting? We have the Moon in that very short time frame has moved a couple of degrees, and now it's beginning to aspect Jupiter. This is kind of a wide aspect, but it's there. Then we're going to bump it forward just a little bit. Maybe we're going to go another 3 hours to 9 o'clock, 9:30 p.m. that same night. And you can see again the Moon has moved another degree. It's moving again towards this aspect with Jupiter. So now I'm really interested and I want to look here and I want to say, well, let's look at 24 hours out. 24 hours after we create the temple, looking at 4:30 p.m., all the same coordinates, and we click OK. And isn't that amazing? We have the moon is now very closely aspected to Jupiter. It's within a 4-degree orb. It's within 3 degrees of Saturn. It is within 3 degrees of aspecting the Sun. And it is just about 6 degrees aspected from Neptune. So what we have is we have 24 hours later, we have this very tight configuration with the pentacle, with the shape of our temple. And that's what I thought was so interesting about this chart and so magical about it, being that this is a very quickly changing configuration. And you can see if we bump it forward again, say April 5th, we're going to about 3 days forward. You can see that this has changed considerably. We don't have this sort of perfect symmetry that we had. And then bumping it forward again, say another 2 days, 48 hours. You can see that that aspect has gone away completely. The moon is now very close to aspecting Jupiter as a conjunct. And then the only aspect we have left for these planets is we have this grand trine kite. Now let me address the grand trine for just a moment, because this is actually one of the things that really got me interested in looking at the chart while all of this was going on. So I'm just going to turn off the moon and I'm going to turn off Neptune, and we're just going to look at these 3 planets that are aspected by this trine. You can see that by, I believe this is the 7th, so this is 1 week after we've created our temple, well, 6 days after we've created our temple. We have a very, very close aspected grand trine, and then it's also in the fire signs. We have the Sun in Aries, we have Saturn in Leo, and then we have Jupiter up here in Sagittarius. And let me show you really quick why I was really interested in this trine and when I started looking at the chart. I read these pages fairly regularly. There's a couple of astrologers that I read. And last year, as we were coming up on the creation of the temple, I wanted to kind of get a sense of what was going on. And so I was reading and read about this grand fire trine with the full moon in Libra, and then just after another eclipse in Pisces. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff that was going on last year. I'll add the link into this page into the blog so that you all can read it. And then the other one that I read was this interesting page from Flash Silver Moon, which she also addresses this grand fire trine. Finally, if you're interested in really looking at astrology, what I'm using here again is WinStar Express. It's quite good for people who are really interested in starting to learn. You can actually do a download of this for about 30 days. You can play with it. You can really get a feel for whether or not you would be interested in learning more about astrology. So finally, flipping back to WinStar, this is the thing that really impressed me, was that the fact that within 24 hours, literally, of the creation of our physical structure, we had a mirror image or a picture literally in the stars of what our structure was. And that was the reason that it was just such an amazing moment when I discovered this and sort of started stepping through the different configurations and looking at the planets like this.